When a plane crashes, the story usually makes headlines. But sometimes the real heroes are the pilots who prevent a disaster. Their stories can disappear without a trace, especially in the Soviet Union, where accidents caused by technical failures were rarely discussed publicly. This is the story of one such flight and the crew who saved everyone on board. December 16, 1982. An An-24B operated by the Kursk Air Force was flying from Kursk to Odessa with an intermediate stop in Boryspil. The aircraft landed safely in Boryspil. Then it took off again. At first, everything seemed normal, but shortly after takeoff, the autopilot and other onboard equipment suddenly switched off. Then the crew noticed something else, a strong smell of burning vinyl chloride. 8 minutes before landing in Odessa, at an altitude of approximately 5,100 meters, thick smoke suddenly filled the cockpit, and then an open flame appeared. An electrical power line behind the electrical panel had caught fire. The crew immediately put on their oxygen masks, but the smoke became so thick that they could barely see. They opened the cockpit door to let some of the smoke into the cabin. The aircraft began to descend. Almost all electrical equipment had to be switched off. The generators were shut down. Only the engines continued to operate. At the same time, flight engineer Nikolai Borodin began fighting the fire. Flight attendant Natalia Leonova was helping the passengers. There were no individual oxygen masks for the passengers, so they had to breathe through handkerchiefs and towels. Outside, the crew couldn't see the ground. The aircraft was still inside the clouds. A trainee, Vladimir Skaryukin, helped the commander determine the aircraft's altitude. The captain was Yuri Ermakov. Then, the aircraft finally emerged from the clouds. But the situation was getting worse. The aircraft was heavily tilted to one side, and the fire was intensifying. The heat became unbearable. Plastic inside the cockpit began to melt. Burning drops fell directly onto the captain. At that moment, flight engineer Borodin took off his coat and held it over the commander. He was protecting the captain from the burning plastic. The crew now had almost no time left. Following the normal procedures was becoming impossible. They made a desperate decision. They opened the baggage compartment door because it had become almost impossible to breathe inside the aircraft. This allowed more air into the cabin. But there was another problem. For the commander to control the aircraft, he had to stick his head out through an open side window. The crew began searching for a place to make an emergency landing. They had to avoid a high-voltage power line in a nearby village. Then Captain Yuri Ermakov spotted something, a flat field. It was their only chance. The landing gear was not extended. The An-24 touched down directly on the field, and then it began to plow through the ground. The aircraft traveled approximately 350 meters across the field. The lower part of the fuselage was torn away, but incredibly, the aircraft remained largely intact. However, the fire was still spreading. There was no time to waste. The passengers had to get out immediately. But another problem appeared. The main door was jammed. The emergency exits were jammed as well. The passengers could not escape through them, so they were evacuated through the baggage compartment. One by one, they got out of the burning aircraft. The crew followed. Everyone managed to reach a safe distance. And then, the fuel tank exploded. The An-24 was almost completely destroyed by fire, but every person on board had survived. From the moment the smoke appeared in the cockpit to the moment the aircraft landed in that field, only 7 minutes and 40 seconds had passed. Just imagine, if the aircraft had remained in the air for only a few minutes longer, the ending could have been completely different. But the crew didn't give up. They kept fighting until the very last second. The incident was later classified. No newspapers reported it, and the exact cause of the fire remained unknown. The pilots received no awards, no public recognition, no headlines, but real heroes don't always receive medals. Sometimes their reward is simply knowing that everyone survived. And on that day, the crew of the An-24 did exactly that. They remained devoted to their profession and brought every passenger safely back to the ground. These were real heroes.